Yo, YouTube, this is Jordan Steele 88 coming at you with another video. And the title of this video is 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers season review. So let's get into it. So the Steelers started the season 2-6 and then finished the season like 7-2, I believe. Excuse me. They started out 2-6 and then started the season and then ended the season off 7-2. So I mean, when we started 2-6, everybody counted the Steelers out though. We all thought it was going to be the Steelers losing season for the first time in 20 years, but that didn't happen because Mike Tomlin did not let that happen. So I'm gonna go by the games that we have won, and I'm gonna go get games that we have lost. So let's get into it. In week 1, Steelers beat the Bengals in overtime 23-10. 23-20, excuse me. Sorry about that. Let me say that again so y'all can understand me. So Steelers beat the Bengals at Cincinnati on week 1 opening day. 23-20 in overtime because despite the Steelers defense playing pretty well early on in the game. Like they forced like 5 turnovers or 6 turnovers in that game, and then T.J. White got hurt in that game, and he was out for at least a couple of weeks. So I thought he was gonna be out for the season when he tore that towards pec. So that was a week 1 win right there for the Steelers against the Bengals at Cincinnati in overtime. And then, because I thought Cincinnati was going to win that game when we got given that touchdown to Jamar Chase and Mika Fitzpatrick blocked that kick in that game, blocked the field goal in that game. That's ended the overtime. In week 2, Steelers lost to the Patriots 17-14. I was at that game. That's when Mr. Trubisky kept missing open receivers. And he was not scanning the field, and we kept complaining about Kenny Pickett in that game, and they didn't do that in that game. I can't believe we lost that game. We should have won that game, but it didn't happen. Week 3, on Thursday night, Steelers lose to the Browns 29-17. That's when the Steelers got worn down by Nick Chubb in that game. Nick Chubb wore us down, and then George Pickens made that phenomenal catch that was unforgiven because of that loss. So, but overall, it was all Nick Chubb in that game against the Browns on Thursday night, where we lost to. Week 4, Steelers lose to the Jets 24-20. That should have been a win right there. That's when Kenny Pickett came in the second half. And he went and drove us for 2 scores in the game, because most of the scores were his, I believe. And then those interceptions he thrown weren't his fault because wide receivers were dropping those passes. Because wide receivers would drop those passes that should have been caught, and Chase Claypool, who was on that team at that time, should have caught one of his. So that's when Kenny Pickett took over from Mr. Trubisky, and he started the next game, which I'm going to talk about any second. So, speaking of that, Steelers versus Bills on week 5. That's when the Steelers got ambushed by the Bills 38-3. First time we scored 3 points. We just got 3 points since 2016. That was against Philadelphia, which I'm talking about that, which I'm going to talk about. But we didn't get 3 points in that game, which I'm going to get to. But anyway, in the Bills game, the Steelers defense got absolutely torched in that game. They got absolutely torched in that game. They got torched. I mean, Kenny Pickett had a rough game in his first start. Wasn't a very good start at all. So overall, Steelers just got ambushed in that game against the Bills in week 5. Now, Tampa Now Steelers versus the Buccaneers. Steelers beat the Buccaneers 20 to 18. It was a pretty good game. Kenny Pickett played half of the game until got a concussion, and then Trubisky took over. And then Trace Claypool made those huge catches down the stretch. Down the stretch, he was huge down the stretch in that game. He was huge down the stretch in that game. And despite the defense being wounded in that game, they made plays in that game against the Buccaneers. They made plays in that game. So, and then week 7, Steelers versus Dolphins. Steelers lost that game 16-10. Should have been a win. I mean, because the defenses, they were dropping interceptions that could have been caught. And then down the stretch in that game, Kenny Pickett had a chance to get us a win, but he threw those 2 costly interceptions that could have been a win. Because that Dolphins game should have been a win right there. Week 8, Steelers go up to Philadelphia, where they, of course, get destroyed 35-13. I mean, Kenny Pickett had a rough game. He threw interception in that game. And overall, the offense because the offensive line got absolutely got bullied around by the Steelers. I mean, by the Eagles' defensive line, which they had a pretty good defensive line with Carlos Davis and Javon Hargrave, the former Steeler, in there. Because that D line for the Eagles was pretty good. It was just pretty good, man. Steelers overall had a rough game, but despite Chase Claypool for that touchdown to Derek Watt in that game, which is Chase Claypool's last game as a Steeler, which we're trading away for Chicago. So Steelers had a bye week 9, and then week 10, Steelers versus Saints. Steelers won that game 20-10. It was a running game in that game. That running game has improved after the bye week. The running game of Najee Harris and Jerry Warren and Kenny Pickett managed the game. So it was a running game against the Saints in that game. And defense played pretty well too. Monty Casey got a pick, and Levi Wallace got a pick in that game. And then week 11, Bengals versus Steelers. Steelers lose 37-30. I mean, that should have been a win because the Steelers, we lost to the team that did not have Jamar Chase, and then Joe Mixon got hurt in that game. And then Jamar Perine, he tore us up with 3 touchdowns on the ground. He wrecked the game. And then T. Higgins wrecked the game some. Just a weird way to lose that game. And the Steelers versus Colts. Steelers bounced back against the Colts 24-17 in week 12. I gotta say it was a running game, man. Benny Snell was doing his thing in that game, and that McFarland Jr. did his thing in that game when Najee Harris was out with an injury. I mean, he got hurt in that game, but he didn't return in that game. I believe. And then defense played almost pretty well, and then the Steelers got bailed out by terrible clock management in that game. They got bailed out by terrible clock management in that game. That we got to win that. And then Kenny Pickett hit George Pickens with that 2-point conversion, though, in that game. Week 13, Steelers go down to ATL, play the Atlanta Falcons, where they won 19-16. Pat Freiermuth had that amazing run, catch a run in that game. That was amazing. Najee Harris, again, was incredible in that game. And then George Pickens had a frustration game. He wasn't getting the ball much. He only been targeted twice with only 1 catch in that game. And then Minka Fitzpatrick sealed the game with an interception. Week 14, Steelers versus Ravens. Ravens beat us 16-14. Kenny Pickett didn't play very much in that game. He had a concussion. He got hurt with a concussion. Then he came back in that game. And then he had reevaluated, and then he didn't come back. That's when I got so angry at Mr. Trubisky because he threw those 3 interceptions. 2 of them were in the red zone. That should have, because he stood at Pat Freiermuth instead of scanning the whole entire field. I mean, most Steelers video makers gave him a reality check for those interceptions he's thrown. The last one was just like a punt. Two of them were more important. They were drive killers. Two of them were two middle linebackers with an interception in the red zone. And then J.K. Dobbins tore us up on the ground. He wrecked the game. J.K. Dobbins just straight wrecked the game. The running game did his end for the Ravens. And still, for the most part, would not factor offensively. And then Steelers versus Carolina Panthers, where they bounced back against the Panthers 24-16. I mean, Mr. Trubisky almost threw those interceptions, though. But overall, the defense played a pretty good game, though. Alex Highsmith, the hometown kid, got like at least 2 sacks in that game. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, and then Marcus Allen did something stupid by taunting their bench, man. That was just really dumb. That was really dumb by his part. And then Najee Harris had a pretty good game, too, so did Jaron Warren. And Mr. Trubisky did a pretty good job of managing the game, even though most Steelers fans ain't feeling him. And then week 16 on Christmas Eve, Steelers versus the Raiders, where the Steelers beat Las Vegas Raiders 13-10. I mean, Steelers got off to a slow start in that game, and then they kicked into high gear in that game, where Kenny Pickett hit George Pickens for a last-second touchdown in that game. Prior Fairman came back, those 2 huge catches in that game, so that Najee Harris had 2 huge runs in that game. And that's the night they were honoring Franco Harris in that game when he passed away 3 days before the game. And that was a win for him. We made Franco Harris proud in that game. So, Franco, rest in peace. And then week 17 on New Year's Day, Steelers faced the Ravens, and the Steelers got their revenge against the Ravens, 16-13. That's when Kenny Pickett once again came up big down the stretch, hit Najee Harris for the game-winning touchdown. And the defense in the second half played pretty well by allowing just 3 points in that game. So, and Najee Harris returned the favor to the Ravens when they did for the revenge in week 14 with 100 yards, though, because our running game was pretty good in that game as well. So, and then the last game, week 18, Steelers versus Browns, where they beat them by double digits, 28-14. And then the Pickett's connections hooked up in the second quarter, though, going into halftime. And then Steelers did pretty well, pass rushing wise, getting a sack. And then, not J.K. Dobbins. Nick Chubb read the game at times, but the Steelers didn't let that happen, though. So, and then down the stretch, though, Connor Hayward came up with 2 huge catches down the stretch, because the Hayward brothers were doing their thing out there. Cameron Hayward got at least like 3 sacks in that game, and Connor Hayward came up with 2 huge catches in that game, and then Derek Watt sealed the game for us against the Browns just 2 days ago. So that's the Steelers. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers season recap. So yeah, so stay tuned. I hope 2023 be lit the next season. So we didn't make the playoffs, so I know we didn't make the playoffs, so hopefully better things next year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is Jordan Steele 88 coming at you with another video. Like, comment, subscribe. See y'all guys in the next video, and as always, here we go, Steelers. Here we go.